CRA Board is now back in session. Roll call, please.
Dingfelder, Goods, Maniscalco, Vieira, Miranda, Carlson, and
Here.
Citro.
We will continue with public comment. Next, please.
Good afternoon, City Council. My name is Verlene. I found out I'm no longer affordable housing material. I found out I'm no longer low-income housing material. I found out recently I am poor housing material. I'm so poor I can't afford the OOR. We got unhealthy conditions. We got cockroaches, mold. We got dangerous crime. We're talking about drugs and gangs. Low water pressure, bad smells, and noise. But the government says I'm obligated to guarantee poor black people, everyone, the rights to live in security, peace, and dignity. Today I want to ask, here in Tampa, where do the poor black people stay at? Under the bridge, behind that park the gentleman was speaking about, gathering our things from around the corner. I sit here this morning, I listen at all this money is being spent, 2, 3, 9, 20, 900. Where do the poor, P-O-O-R, live? Where do we reside at? Right now, the conditions, I want you to remember these numbers. 215 over 121. That's my blood pressure last Thursday because I couldn't be here because of these are the conditions that I personally live in, and I'm sure there's somebody else who have cockroaches, mold, dangerous environment, low water pressure, bad smells, and unnecessary noise. I cannot be the only person here. So I come today for self. I come for everybody else who is so poor they can't afford the OOR or a bus pass to come down here and see you. Now, I have a work credit of 16 work credits. For people who don't know, that's in TV land. The work credit is 20 work credits. I have 16 of them. Social Security won't give me 2 cents of my money. My money. I want a better living condition because I don't want the cockroaches. I don't want mold. I don't want dangerous crime. I don't want low water pressures. I don't want bad smell. Because right now my respiratory sucks. Again, it is the government's responsibility to provide adequate housing, safe housing, secure housing, peace, and to have some dignity where I reside at. And right now, these nonprofit organizations, I missed the person who spoke about the nonprofit organization, but I need to let her know. Somebody need to check that nonprofit organization and find out who's spending the money. Because that grant money that I last heard about, I haven't seen a dime of it spent anywhere. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Is it still morning? Good morning, good afternoon, or whatever. Okay. Yvette Lewis, campaign promises. Trust me. Believe in me. Hold me accountable. Those are some of the words that I heard when all of y'all were running for office. And this is what I expect for y'all to do. Because if you asked us to do this for you, then I'm asking you. And we're constantly coming down here every Thursday, giving up our time of the day, giving up our hours, our work, our livelihood to come down here to state this. We don't have the money to hire a firm, a law firm, or anything to come speak on our behalf. We do it ourselves. It takes a lot. Let me tell you, she talked about the OOR. I got that. And it takes a lot out of my time to do that. One of the things is, the residents in East Tampa has been overlooked, forgotten, taken advantage of, and most of them have a sense of hopelessness. I hear that the Ybor City, they had like 5 different beautiful things that they're doing to let the people know that Christmas is coming. We got nothing. My baby can't see nothing other than what I put in her house. Okay? Nothing. That's all I'm saying. And she's 2 years old. So it's a sense of hopelessness in our community. And I want you to know, when y'all thinking about these trains and trolley stops and everything coming downtown, that's a good thing. But people in East Tampa live in downtown too. Stop a train or a trolley in East Tampa. Give us something to go on. And also, I appreciate what you did for Fair Oaks, removing that one rat, but if we all know, if one rat was there, because one don't give birth to one when it comes to rodents and rats. There are more rats there. It is time to tear Fair Oaks down and give us a new park. Please, give us a new park. It is time for that. The other thing is that y'all need to talk about these roundabouts. Y'all need to talk about who's getting the deals on these roundabouts. Y'all need to talk about voting on whether we should keep them or whether they should go, because we have had enough, okay, of y'all shoving food down our throat and telling us what's best for us. But y'all come to us and ask us for our vote, and we were there for you. We're asking for you to be there for us. Another thing, the executive director, it needs to report to this board. It doesn't need to go to the mayor. You all asked us for our votes. I know you did. I seen you at the political forums, and I seen you at the NAACP meetings. Think about that.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Next, please.
And I'll just say, Mr. Daniels thinks there's
Chair
seven
recognizes
rats up here that need removing. So. Right, Tony?
Good afternoon. I'm Bishop Michelle B. Patty. I would just like this point of order. If council don't want us to say anything back to you all, don't call us by name and say things to us. Point of order. Secondly, I want to start by the Super Bowl. I went to the meeting this week. The contracts, the bar has been set too high. I don't see any black people getting any work out of the Super Bowl. They have a list of criteria that the average person would not be able to meet. So that's just a smoke and mirror that they're doing, talking about the Super Bowl. I want to commend the CRA of Ybor City on the businesses that they brought into the area, on their Christmas lighting. All I hear about in East Tampa was blight, rodents, trash. There's a problem here. Why would we have to go look for Christmas lighting? If they're able to produce them, then they should be able to be done over there. Why businesses are not being accumulated in East Tampa? Don't tell us about East Tampa and all we can see is darkness. That's why our children are acting the way they're looking and acting up, because people are playing games with the money. When I hear about transparency, and then I hear about the CAR chair having to accuse herself because she went on a trip that she should not have gone on. That's a problem. So we cannot sit here and allow one thing to go over in East Tampa and we give claps and award for things going on in other parts of this community. You all should be concerned about that. You all should be asking the question. We shouldn't have to sit here to all day and all night to get up here and say what you all need to be saying to these people. And once again, I'm going to echo from Yvette. You need to have the CRA executive board meet with you all. The mayor has enough on her plate. We don't need to give her any more. You all need to handle that so that y'all can bring butts in here and we hold people accountable. The community is sick and tired of paying for taxes and seeing their dollars going nowhere. Fair Oaks, that's a center that has been used. It's been people from children, seniors, all attend this center. It need to be torn down. Why? Because money was already allocated for it. We're not asking for anything that was not promised. Promises being made over and over and over just to be broken. So the things that we have brought to your attention, they need to be addressed. But number one, we are human beings. We do pay taxes. We need to be treated fairly. Your staff is on staff. They get paid by us, the taxpayers. They can sit, they can wait, but I probably have a ticket on my car now, but it's important. I will pay the ticket because I need to stand here and let my voice be heard for the people that want to be heard that cannot come down here to be heard because they cannot wait. I have clients. I own a business, so I need to be attending to my business. I'm not some fruitcake just came out here to raise sand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patty. Next, May I take a moment? How many more people are going to be speaking after this gentleman? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We will continue until quarter to 1. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Johnny Johnson. I come down here again. First of all, to ask you guys to stop the circus that's going on. First of all, we have no one. I sit down here every week and hear things rattled off at the mouth. As human beings, we have the ability to speak. So therefore, we're able to say and make things out what it is. Again, you can bring these slideshows and stuff and make our community look a certain way, but the fights are what they are. The fights are what they are. No one is fight checking nothing. No one is saying down here. And I'd just like to speak on one thing and calling out the Tampa Housing Authority about Central Park. 8 generations over there. I'm a lifelong resident until not relocated. People was kicked out of public housing. It wasn't, oh, they moved in a better spot. They good where they at. They don't want to come back because they have more opportunity. That's not the case. Well, you have to have someone to fight check this and have people to go out and talk to the people themselves, who I am one of them, and accustomed and out on the street talking to people every day about our living conditions and what we can do better to better ourselves, since we elect people that won't do it for us. Again, Temple Housing did not relocate people. They ran a one-strike deal and kicked people out. And again, rebuilding, when you're going to rebuild and put some of the solid rock foundations that was there back in the facility. I go over here in Central Park where I was born and raised. My little brother was born on Governor Street inside the housing sort of what y'all call slums that we had the best of. Again, what are you going to do to relocate and small black businesses back in this instead of trying to look for 18,000 square foot like one of you guys suggested, breaking it down to small individual units so that you can get more I don't want to use minority because everybody grabbing that label, but more blacks in to be business owners. So again, I'm down here on the concern of a citizen that pays tax, that vote, and that's going to advocate that and hold people accountable that we are being used and stepped on as people. We are not being given the tools properly to build anything. We're given telling us to go to apple trees where we should be at an orange tree. We can get nothing done at an apple tree if we're supposed to be at an orange tree. Y'all are sending up fake smoke streams telling us it's this like this. Then you have people that don't fully represent the people coming down here giving y'all false information, and none of you guys up there decides to fight check nothing these people say because they have beautiful pictures and coloration and the ability to speak and make it sound beautiful. I'm telling you as a resident and as a person out here, a lot of those stuff is a blatant lie, strictly a lie, and you guys can go and ask the citizen and not the paid, appointed, and people just looking out for themselves and the interests of the others, and the lobbyists and the contractors.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good morning. My name is Cynthia Few. I reside at 4506 North 29th Street, Tampa, Florida, 33610. I took a quote that President Barack Obama said, "We have to work together to make our voices heard." So when we, the people, voted for Natasha Goodley to be the chairperson of the East Tampa Revitalization, then we should respect that. We should treat her with respect. And me, myself, I'm 71 years old, but I have been working in College Hill, Belmont Heights, and my co-workers are Rosalie Jones, who is the president of Northview Hills, Fran Tate, who is the president of the Jackson Heights Association, and we're up in age. We need young people to stand up and do things in our neighborhoods for us. And if we beat them down before they can accomplish what they're trying to do, then we won't have any generation to follow because they'll see how we treated her and will not step up and try to help us in our communities to do the things that need to be done. So what I'm asking is, if you're dissatisfied with Natasha, then the next meeting, when it's time to vote for a chairperson, then you put your name in the hat and get voted in, or you put your name in the hat to become a board member. So if we all just treat each other like we want to be treated and wrap our hands and give her love, and if she does not do something that you want done, then show her.
She, ma'am,
Don't just
Miss-
disrespect her.
Ms.
Don't
Burton,
talk to
she
me.
has time to talk. She's
She
been
don't
given
talk
3
to
minutes.
me.
She's been given
Don't
3
talk to me. Talk to you.
And
Unless you wanna
as
come
I
in.
said, please give her the respect that you would want, and what you should do is to put your hat in the,
Yeah, we'll
if you
do.
want.
We'll do. We'll do.
Next,
Will
please.
do.
Next, please.
I don't think so.
Natasha Goodley, 2705 East 24th Avenue. I've been chair now for a little over 13 months, and as chair of the East Tampa Community Revitalization Partnership, we've worked to accomplish several things. We have a down payment assistance program that was targeted from the community to assist renters with trying to convert to homeowners. Our program is a little bit different because we do allow for 203K mortgages. We've put together a rehab assistance program to help residents rehab their homes. We have over 100 homes set for demolition that should have been demolished decades ago. We cited over 37 businesses with code enforcement violations that probably should have had been cited years and years ago. We've had tons of illegal dumping removed from our area. We've had tree limbs lifted and cleared to allow better lighting in the community. We're purchasing properties to remove the blight and add development to our community. As you all know, we have the 2 RFPs out, and we have our 12th annual Christmas tree lighting that we have been doing for the past 12 years, and it is a celebration that is, this year will be at Young Middle Magnet because of the weather, but it is something that has happened and been on the books for over a decade. So, as you all know, it has been tough being chair for 13 months. I've taken bullets for the entire CAC and for the neighborhood associations. And unfortunately, many of the neighborhood associations have stopped attending our meetings because they don't want to deal with they don't want to get picked on, they don't want to deal with the bullying, and they don't want to deal with the infighting. And so I've made it my business to go to their meetings to be able to see what it is that they actually want. The bullies, unfortunately, don't care about making East Tampa a better place. They don't care about removing the blight, and for the most part, many of them, it's just personal gain. So in order to bring development, which is what everyone's been asking for, we've had to work to remove the blight. We've had to work to remove the illegal dumping because no developer would do anything. So that's been our goal. I've been scrutinized and investigated by everyone that anyone can think of. I've had my name pop up in so many meetings with city officials that it's sickening. They claim that I've done immoral, unethical things, that my service is a conflict of interest, but every department who has looked into it has all concluded the same thing, that every last one of these claims are unfounded. They want to bully me out of office, but it's very interesting because we just held elections in October, and anyone who wanted to be a part of the CAC could step up and actually put their name.
Wrap up very quickly, please.
Anyone who wanted to be a part of the CAC could actually fill out the application and be a part, and anyone on the CAC could be chair. So if there's an issue, put your name in the hat and actually get involved. But unfortunately, the bullies, that's not what it's about.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Next,
you.
please.
Good afternoon, Councilman. My name is Quentin F. Robinson, resident at 1903 Meridale Avenue, Tampa, Florida, 33612. which is in District 7, represented by Mr. Louis Vieira. The reason I'm here today is to call for each and every one of you gentlemen to really search your souls about ending the downtown Tampa CRA as well as the Channel District CRA. These are the districts that are most important, are generating the majority of the dollars for CRAs, but yet they do not qualify to be a CRA. Three proponents that suggest for an area to be a CRA are slum, blight, and affordable housing. Downtown Tampa does not afford any of those things to have taking place right now. Neither does the Channel District or Water Street. So what's taking place is that these CRAs are being utilized by developers for them to grow their profits and build sky rises to lift their names. It's unfortunate that the entire city of Tampa, the coffers that we need to generate revenue for this city are going back to these particular areas that no longer even qualify for a CRA. There's no slum in downtown Tampa. There's no blight in downtown Tampa. There's no affordable housing in downtown Tampa. Three things that CRAs are supposed to fix. These things have been fixed in downtown Tampa. They've been fixed on the Channel District. Why do they still continue to exist today? Mr. Fargo, I will hope that you would quote that in the paper as well. My time isn't up yet. I was waiting for a response. But again, the problem that we're facing now is that the city has to generate revenue. If it's not generating revenue from tax dollars or service fees, those are being put back on the people. Why not tax the individuals who are developing in downtown Tampa? Coming into downtown Tampa, you can see cranes from Nebraska Avenue. But yet, East Tampa is struggling in their CRA. Drew Parker is struggling in their CRA. All of the dollars are coming back to downtown Tampa because developers are utilizing it for their advantage, and the city council is allowing them to do it, and so is the mayor. It's time to stop focusing on special interests and give back to the people that elected you and employed you to do the job for them. That's why I'm here today, to advocate on behalf of communities that vote that you represent these people, regardless of their median income, their race, whatever sexual orientation that they are. The CRAs in downtown Tampa should be sunsetted within the next 2 years because they do not do anything that justifies a general revenue coming back to the city and disproportionately affects other areas. That has to stop. I'm asking each of you gentlemen today to think about what I'm stating today, place it upon your heart and mind to make a decision to sunset the CRA in downtown Tampa as well as the Channel District. Thank you for your time.
Next, please.
Question.
Mr. Councilman Dingfelder.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson.
Mr. Robinson?
No, that Ms. Robinson.
I'm sorry.
No, you called it. No, you ducked out real quick.
Not that Robinson.
I did want to respond very quickly. I think your points are very well taken with this councilman. Two things I wanted to say. Number one, we appreciate you putting your name out there and running for office last go round. I know Mr. Vieira would even agree because you guys had a good, clean race, and you brought up good points. Lewis brought up good points, et cetera. But what I really wanted to do is address what you said, which is that, and my perspective is a little bit different because I'm a little bit older, but down when they created the CRAs, those two CRAs, Channelside was blighted. Channelside had a bunch of boarded up, bombed out warehouses and that sort of thing. And at the time, I think blight would be a very good definition for it. The downtown district as well. Downtown's still not perfect, but definitely has improved. So I think the creation of these CRAs was appropriate at the time. 30-something years ago with downtown, 10 years ago with 10, 15 years ago with Channelside. And yes, they've been success stories. They are both doing very well. Then we get to the point that Mr. Carlson has pointed out that, and you have too, that at some point maybe you look at your success story and say, where does it end? And maybe it does end. So I think your point is very well taken. I appreciate you waiting and giving us your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I respond?
That's up to Mr. Chairman.
Please, make it brief.
All right, thank you. Mr. Dingfelder, you brought out something regarding the Jackson House. The Jackson House sits in the downtown Tampa CRA. I would consider the Jackson House to be slum and blight. So if you're relocating it from one area to another CRA, my question is that why hasn't the community of people involved with the downtown CRA even taken a look at the Jackson House to repair it if it's considered slum and blighted? That's one point. And why would you would have to relocate a historical landmark to another CRA for it to get the attention that it deserves when the downtown Tampa CRA already generates the majority of the money of any other CRA has been implemented by the city of Tampa. And of course, you did make a great point. I'm not stating that what took place 30 years ago, that there wasn't slum blight or affordable housing issues in downtown Tampa. What I'm saying that today, presently, those things no longer exist, and neither should these CRAs.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Wow, man. First of all, we could have got rid of downtown and Sunnyside 2 years ago when they were up for renewal. But they held up West Tampa for those two to get renewed. Because they already had run their time. Now they got another 40 years. Okay? That's what happened. They held up West Tampa to get those two on the books renewed. Not a first one, renewed. So, you know, I'm not going to go there. I don't stay there. I ain't going to talk about East Tampa because I know what that's about. Okay? I know what that's about. I'm here to talk about, which I didn't say earlier, opportunity zones. I'm here requesting. I've already I'm going to ask you, man. You're supposed to get together. We ain't got together yet. But the city of Tampa, once again, the application ain't filed for the historical sign to be on the interstate. And there's plenty of room to put a sign. The city of Tampa has not filled the application out, which the secretary said, David Gwynn, said he need an application. Ain't submitted an application. Please submit an application, man. You want to do it for you? Now, next thing. We want opportunity zones, and I sent the mayor an email a month and a half ago requesting that all of the CRA census tracts in the West Tampa be considered opportunity zones. Buckhorn came and made a couple of them to help West River, but when you go past Rome, he didn't include that. He didn't include the one south of the interstate. The opportunity zones are needed to give a overlay, just like we got overlay for design guidelines. We need, that is another way to boost the CRA, is to make sure that there are opportunity zones for all of the census tracts that's in a CRA. That don't take no rocket scientists to do. It takes the city of Tampa mayor's department to make the request to the governor, and if you need some Republicans to support it, I can find some. But at least make the application. Buckhorn did it, and he was a Democrat. And they even got the lots for the stadium in Ybor City, opportunity zones. Those census tracts. So if you're going to do it for that and you didn't get the stadium, we're asking in West Tampa CRA to have the mayor's office to ask the governor and the feds, because it's already slum and blighted. So you don't need that point. That's the reason it's already should be an opportunity zone. So we're asking that the remaining census tracts in West Tampa that are not CRAs, that are not opportunity zones, be designated opportunity zones, and it starts with the mayor's office, Mr. Bennett. So if you could just make the application and get it denied, then we'll know it'll happen. Because it's not something that's going to cost you a lot of money to do, but it would greatly enhance down the road the federal money that is only going to be going to opportunity zones. It ain't going to be no more CDBG and all that. It's going to be opportunity zones, and we need that to help do what we need to do on the west side. And that's all I'm saying.
Would you please give us your name for the record?
Joseph William Jordan Robinson, Jr.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Walter Smith II. I am the Vice Chair of the West Tampa CRA Community Advisory Committee, along with my chair, Joe Robinson. But today, I want to discuss this issue very quickly about what the purpose of the executive director should be, who the executive director should be reporting to. I stand here today to advocate in favor of the executive director reporting to you, the board. It's necessary. Your job as a city council is to legislate. I do stand in support of that. And we do need to make certain that you are having good checks and balances with regard to what's happening in our communities. The job of the CRA is to make sure that you are empowering people. The job of the CRA is to make certain that people are having a better quality of life. And as long as you have the right checks and balances in place, as long as the executive director is reporting to you, as long as we have the relationships that we continue to have between our CRA, community advisory councils, and you, then we will continue to have those checks and balances, because you and the executive director are supposed to serve at the pleasure of the people. That's the job, that's your charge, that's what we expect. And so I do stand in favor of the executive director reporting to you and making certain that there's the appropriate checks and balances in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Thank you, Council. Victor DeMille, 4925 Independence Parkway, Suite 195. I'm here representing Malka Isaac. You know, a lot of people come here to bitch and moan and complain about something that went wrong, which I did 2 months ago, and you listened. It took them a couple months, and I'm here to thank you and offer my appreciation for the fact that you said, you know what, the Massey Park project, it's been going on for a couple years. There's a new thing that came about. You guys sit together, work something out. So I'm here to thank you, number one. Thank Mr. Bennett. He's been outstanding. Mr. Rosner's not here. Mr. Dial also as well from the Parks Department. We have sat down and met with them. Everyone's been really, it's been a 180-degree turn from what we were facing when we first came to you and asked for help. So we have been meeting with the neighborhood. I want to correct a few things. I don't want to relitigate why Malka wasn't noticed over the last couple of years. That's water over the dam as far as we're concerned. I'm trying to take your direction, which we asked for, which is to look forward. What can we do to fix this? I think having a restaurant in a park, that amenity's already left the station. Again, I've said it before. You have Big Race Fish Camp. You've got Fort Greenfields. You've got Ballast Point, and many, many other examples of parks and restaurants coexisting. So I'm disappointed. Michael Pedrosa called me a couple days ago and said we met over the weekend. We agreed to not fight you guys anymore. We want to work together. And today I'm kind of disappointed that they took the stance they did. But last week, the Downtown Community Advisory Committee met, the people who you appointed to represent the downtown CRA, and they voted 8 to 1, I believe, to reject the plan that was the final plan up until this point, and to move forward to look about moving the dog park away from the restaurant, which is all we're asking. We're not, every amenity that's in the park now, the dog park, the seating area, the grassy area, all those amenities, the artist area, all those amenities that are part of the park design today will be in the park design when we're finished. All we asked, and I was quoted thanks to Mr. Frago, that the dog poop next to a restaurant does not work. And that was the headline, and I stand today saying the same thing to you. Dog poop next to a restaurant does not work. And even though these people are very angry, upset, and disappointed, I sympathize with them. And by the way, thank you, Andrea Zellman, for listening to our concerns as well. That's the same process we want to move forward to and work out so we can have a nice amenity and have a cool amenity for everybody, for the public to enjoy at Massey Park downtown. Thanks.
Next, please.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Malka Isaac. I'm here before you again. And the first thing I want to do the same thing like Mr. DeMaio. Thank you all. Because of you, we've had an opportunity to meet with the city people, with the park people, and with everybody else. We had a difficult time trying beforehand to get to meet with them, but because of you all, you opened up that opportunity for us, and it has happened. And I may not have told you beforehand, I am a member of the Florida Bar. And everybody is supposed to speak the truth here, but more so as an attorney, there are consequences if you don't. And I am telling you that I have not had notice of all that was going on in the last 3 years. And you had a letter from my attorney, Richard McIntyre. We've asked Mr. Rosner for notice. We are not getting into the detail what happened. It's passé, but I have not had notice. So it is not my fault, and just due process requires, it's just fair for me to have a notice of what's going on. I have also spoken with a veterinarian since then, and he also told me that he's sure by the health department it's absolutely prohibited. We will not take away from the people that were in front of you anything. All we want to do is rearrange the park and this restaurant seating. And I can assure you the issue of what's going to happen with the restaurant seating in the future will be subject to a lease between me and the city of Tampa. And I'm sure that their legal department will take care of the issues that were raised. And I appreciate you for the help that you have given me. And we don't need to get into details. It's not the right forum, but the process will now go forward. And I hope there will come a day that all of us will be here and everybody will be happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else wanting to speak? All right. So you had your 3 minutes. I'm sorry, Mr. Daniels. Yes, that's what I'm asking. Is there a second?
Now, and let me
Go ahead.
amend that. We're coming back at council at 5 o'clock.
Yes.
Right, so everybody knows, okay, just to make sure.
So I'd like to make that 1:45 if we could. Could you?
I'd like to move that we recess until 1:45.
We have a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Carlson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are at recess. Does that make?
Oh, yeah, no. Oh, yeah. Now, what do we have?
Good afternoon. The CRA board is back in session. Roll call, please.
Dingfelder, Goods, Maniscalco, Vieira,
Here.
Miranda, Carlson, and Citro.
Here. We need a, starting on agenda item number 8, motion for the resolution.
So move.
We have a motion made by Councilman Vieira, seconded by Councilman Goods. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Number 9, need a motion for resolution.
So move. Second.
We have a motion made by Councilman Goods, seconded by Councilman Vieira. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item number 10.
Mr. Chair, board members, my name's Neil Strelo. I'm a senior planner with VHB. My offices are located at 501 East Kennedy Boulevard, Suite 1010, Tampa, Florida. We do have a presentation today. It's a short presentation, provides a few takeaways on the Vision 2020 master plan. The agenda item is seeking your approval of the final report. Is there a way to bring up the, oh, there it is, great. Earlier this year, the VHB team was selected by the city and the Planning Commission to prepare the Ybor City Vision 2020 plan. Our team includes Landwise. I'm trying to advance. There we go. Our team includes Landwise advisors who completed the retail market assessment and open workshop for architecture, who assisted us with the urban form and design elements. The report contains multiple planning assessments that were completed by the team and documented in the final report that was made available to you. We can all recognize that Ybor City is a historic Tampa neighborhood and that the community is connected to and through the downtown and the surrounding neighborhoods. That is continued to change with the redevelopment that's occurring in and around the district. The important commercial corridor, 7th Avenue, the entire length of 7th Avenue, and the recently improved 21st and 22nd Streets, along with emerging and transitioning areas to the south along the Adamo Drive corridor, are continuing to evolve. Change is being seen in completion of adaptive reuse of structures, construction of new residential product and buildings, and the anticipated opening of several new buildings, the Ybor Hotel and restaurants on 7th being represented here. The chart on the left is depicting what is projected growth by 2045. And what you can see is both in the dwelling units, the household population, and employment, Ybor District, the CRA district, is anticipated to grow substantially within this next 2 decades. And part of this is recognizing how to implement both infrastructure and policy changes or modifications to support this growth through the vision plan. During the project, we had an extensive engagement program. We met regularly with staff and the YCDC board and the standing subcommittees. We use those along with neighborhood associations and property owners to surface, collect background information, and complete the research into the planning assessments in the project. Additionally, our community engagement included a May 15th community workshop that was well attended with more than 100 persons in attendance and several of the board members as well. We also had a dedicated project website and an online community survey that returned more than 250 responses to a district-wide survey instrument. All of this was used to make recommendations brought forward into the strategic action plan update, the strategies on implementation for the vision plan. A couple I'm going to highlight a couple of the planning assessments for your consideration. The team completed a retail market assessment for 7th and 8th Avenue, first floor conditions. The results show a 14% vacancy rate along that corridor, those two corridors, and a 20% gross square footage being occupied in office uses. A takeaway is that highly successful business, retail business districts are aiming at being less than 10% vacancy. And the desire is, after vacancy is taken care of, is to try and have retail uses on the first floor, office uses or other uses on the second or upper floors to reinforce that street level activity. The team also estimated that there's a current unmet retail need in the district, more than 78,000 square feet of services and uses that could be attracted to this area, and this is not in reflection of the projected growth over the next 2 decades.
Could I ask a question before he moves on?
Sure, recognize Councilman Nick.
Can you go back one slide?
I will try.
I saw that
Yeah.
when I was looking at this last night, and I didn't understand it. Where does that number come? Where does the 111,000 come from? Is that space that's actually there and built out?
No, this is an actual demand based on population. It is a projection of demand, retail demand, by our teammate Landwise Advisors. What the 32,000 square feet represent is projects that are already being considered or in the pipeline. And so what that leaves is an unmet need of 78,000 that could be supportive retail uses that could be located in this district or in close proximity to the district.
And that includes
all types
residents?
All types of retail uses.
That includes residential demand as well as tourist demand as well as office demand? I mean, associated employment demand?
This is focused directly on retail.
Right.
But it's those contributors, the employees, the residents, and the visitors coming to the district. And education, Hillsborough Community College students as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you. One of the additional planning assessments included a review of land use and zoning standards to identify those conditions affecting redevelopment in the district. And there was specific interest in district standards and the update of the Barrio Latino urban design guidelines that are underway. There was a stated desire to ensure that there's better consistency between those documents, the future land use, the zoning district, and the design guides. Really with the emphasis on improving the predictability of redevelopment for private property owners as they move into the process. Part of the discussion, sorry this is very difficult to see, but it's really relative to the building heights of the district, 45 and 60 feet, typical across the entire zoning districts, with those growing from 45 at 7th up to 60 and a little bit higher outside of the district along Adamo Drive, where higher intensity is envisioned someday in the future. Part of this discussion really revolved around the contributing structure parcels within the district and non-contributing structure parcels. And the community, while certainly loves the historic district and doesn't want to see anything that would jeopardize the designation status, certainly feels that there is redevelopment of parcels that don't have contributing structures should have some recognized differentiation in the urban design guides. And that was a recommendation coming forward as those are updated.
What does that mean exactly? It means to soften up the barrio standards for new
Define
development?
Define them uniquely for those parcels that have historic structures on those parcels, and those that are not, that are vacant or don't have contributing structures.
It's not defined now?
They are treated, non-contributing structure parcels are treated and limited to their height and bulk based upon adjacency to contributing structures. And there's a belief that there's a way to modify those standards so that increased development up to the standards of the zoning district could be met on those non-contributing parcels.
My only comment on that is, thank you, Mr. Chairman, is Frankie's Patio, familiar with that?
I am, yeah.
I don't know what they call it now. That's probably been called 10 different things ever since it was Frankie's Patio, but. Huh? Yeah, it's called vacant. It was called the Tarantula headquarters for a while. Sorry, Ed. But Frankie's Patio, in all seriousness, is kind of like, you know, and that was, who knows, 15, 20 years ago, but it's like, oh, we've got beautiful 7th Avenue with historic architecture, and all of a sudden we got Frankie's Patio, and whoever designed that, and then whoever allowed it, Barrio or what have you, and it's kind of like, I hope that this concept you're talking about is not something that would encourage or allow that type of bastardization of the Barrio standards.
No, it's not. What the impetus is to ensure that that certainly the design guidance to structures occurring within the district need to meet the context and the design guides of the district. Where we saw as part of our, and I'll step forward into a couple of the 3D images, a differentiation is where setbacks, it's really where buildings are situated on the parcel. Architecturally, they should fit the context in which they sit within this district. But when you diminish the overall height and standard for the zoning district, because it happens to be adjacent to a historic property, that was the concern.
Okay, thank you.
So the next two slides really are representing a couple examples of that where if you considered 2, 3, or 4 story redevelopment on a typical block, not a specific block in the district, what opportunities exist for redevelopment of additional residential, how to accommodate parking on properties that are either in the rear of the building or contained within the structure underneath the building, because that is going to be one of the continuing infrastructure discussions that we'll move on to in a moment about public parking accommodation within Ybor and how additional cars are entered into the district. We completed several infrastructure assessments as part of this reporting, and I was going to focus specifically on the parking. Both public and private spaces are accommodate and support the 7th Avenue commercial use. 60% of the spaces, the public inventory currently has a permit restriction attached to it. Somebody has use of that space during portions of the day or evening or throughout the entirety of the day. That number is going to continue, that rate is going to continue to increase. I'm sorry, that popped off. That rate is going to continue to increase, especially on the west end where new office and new residential is being proposed and being delivered in the commercial corridor. And those spaces are going to be allocated out of the public spaces. This slide is the private vendors who control land, surface lots, and also support the commercial district. A lot of the discussion in the community outreach was about safe and effective routes to these surface lots, both in the public and the private locations, and effective means by which employees are represented in some rate considerations as they are needing to be there for extended hours. So I know staff is working. The vendors have been into the YCDC Board of Director meetings, and they continue to work with them on opportunities. Another inventory item that was looked at was really the connectivity to and through the system, through the district, including sidewalk locations, the green being existing sidewalks, the red being missing links within the district. The community identified a strong desire for interconnectivity to the district in downtown, connection to transit, connection to the Selman Greenway Trail and the future Nucio Green Spine. So that's all modes of vehicle, bicycle, and pedestrian. We looked at ADA ramp locations and missing locations in order to identify and help prioritize where some future work, some future budgeting may be able to accommodate to complete these missing links. One area in particular is represented to the north of this along 13th. The long red line is the 13th Avenue corridor, which really is the frontage road for DOT's improvement. It's a missing link right now, but as part of the proposed DOT improvements, the community has identified a strong desire to make sure that those linkages occur as part of the DOT improvements. All of these are need to be weighed and measured against the historic street system, those brick streets that are in existence. There has been other items before you or discussed about rebricking streets in the community. That was a strong comment that was discussed and will continue to be discussed at the YCDC. All of these types of improvements really lead to a discussion about community health and how making locations more walkable increases the benefit of community health. It looks to provide better mixed-use projects and ultimately adds to the economic development of this district and those that have a high walkability factor, certainly adding on to what Ybor is already known for. The final two slides is blocked by this by the closed caption, but the strategic action plan contains the consolidated strategies from the Ybor vision, the 2005 plan, the update that was completed in 2010, and then new strategies that were proposed out of the community discussion for the 2020 plan. They're organized by strategy, department lead, priority, and then status. The next three slides really represents those new elements that were included as strategies, and they're organized under plan and policy or infrastructure-related groupings. I'd be glad to take answer any questions from you. I really appreciate the opportunity to work on this project with the city and staff and the Planning Commission. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Councilman Carlson.
Just a short statement. You know, my company is now in Ybor, so I'm spending a lot more time there than I did before. But I think in talking to a lot of the business owners and investors in Ybor, I think Ybor is going through like the fourth or fifth generation of development. It started as a community, then it dropped off, and then it turned into an arts community, and then it turned into a bar district. And what I see now happening is it's turning back into a community again. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to focus on the not just on the buildings and infrastructure, but on the community building and the connectivity of what's happening. And in particular, talking about retail, we need to think about retail in terms of what are the amenities that people in the offices need, what are the amenities that people that live there need, and think about it as rebuilding a community again. It's going to be different than it was historically with some of the same bones and some of the same families and people, but it's different and growing into something really, really unique again.
Yeah, I agree. The influence of office users, employees within the district is substantial and is growing. And those types of service uses or shopping uses that are typically felt by an employee may be different than visitors coming to the district or residents as well.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Councilman Dingfelder.
Just procedurally, and I don't know, Courtney, if you're, or Andrea, Ms. Zellman, procedurally, are y'all looking for us to adopt this today, or, and if you are, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. The agenda item is to approve. On Monday, we will present to the Planning Commission as well, as they are a co-sponsor of this project.
Okay. Thank you. So I don't know in terms of time, if there's any urgent time crunch that we need to do it. Frankly, it's a lot to digest, about 100 pages. And I looked at an abbreviated version yesterday, but now I'm seeing this larger version. I wouldn't really be prepared or happy about voting on it today or this month unless somebody can tell me an overwhelming reason why we would need to. Is there any kind of time crunch, Ms. Orr?
Do we have to take action before?
Well, we'd like to take it to the Planning Commission on Monday.
But
Monday,
can you-
we're already on the agenda.
Right, but can you take it to them anyway? And because I think our vote is independent of theirs. I mean, I would think they're.
I would think that they would want our approval first.
Good afternoon, Jay Collins, Planning Commission staff. You are the final say-so on your plan for the CRA. The Planning Commission will not be taking action on it. It is just simply a status update to say that the item has been completed. So it is your purview as to what you would like to do with it.
Okay.
Is there a motion to go ahead and accept this?
Moved it. Well, I still have the floor, I think, but I'd make a motion to just defer it for a month because neither Ms. Orr, Planning Commission, Ms. Zellman have indicated that there's any particular rush. I think you guys have been working on this for a year or more. So it's 100 pages. I don't know what's hidden in there. Not I mean hidden. I don't know what's in there that I haven't seen. I'd like to review it. I'm sure everybody else would too in a little more detail.
I have a question. Is this the type of thing where it's gonna go to the Planning Commission and then it will come back to the CRA board to be adopted or to the City Council to be adopted? 'Cause
The Planning Commission will not be taking action on the item on Monday. You are correct that normally the Planning Commission would see this item prior to you taking action on it. However, the calendar is what the calendar is, and you are meeting prior to the Planning Commission in November.
But in term, they're not taking action. They're just gonna review and accept, as a document. So anyway, that's my motion. I think it's a friendly motion. It looks like a good document. But like I say, I haven't had a chance to really review it carefully.
If I may.
Surely.
If there's no prejudice suffered out of professional courtesy to Councilman Dingfelder, I have no problem with that. If there's no prejudice or delay, I have no problem with that.
Councilman Carlson.
Where do you see a 100-page version? I've only seen this.
Yeah, well, I think Annette slipped in this 100-page version.
I've only seen the PowerPoint that we.
Right, actually, it's 110 pages, gets you to the appendix, and then the appendix I don't even have attached. But anyway, yep, there's a big version.
Yeah, I don't have the date in front of me, sorry, but I did send it a couple of weeks, about a week and a half ago probably to the council.
Yeah.
Yeah, the full 118-page report.
Right. There's an abbreviated version, which is, I guess, the PowerPoint version, and then there's the thicker version, which I'm holding in my hand, is 110
Yeah,
pages.
that version was sent about a week and a
No,
half
I'm
ago.
not criticizing. It's
The fuller one.
If I may, again, if a member feels he needs more time and there's no prejudice suffered, I And no unreasonable delay. I see no problem with delaying a month
So you second my motion?
if I may, so long as there's no prejudice or unreasonable delay that would cause any challenges, correct?
No.
Okay,
No.
yeah, I'll second it then.
Motion is made by Councilman Dingfelder, seconded by Councilman Vieira. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
And that would just be to defer to the next CRA meeting, whenever that is.
And do you need a resolution approving it? Because the way it appears on the agenda today was really more just informational. I'm just wondering, do we need to prepare a resolution approving it, adopting it? Minnie?
I don't think so. I can research it, but I don't think that we do.
Okay.
You did good. Thank you. Let's move on to item agenda number 11. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Louis.
Yes, sir.
Tampa Heights Riverfront, CRA. Going once, going twice. Item agenda number 12, East Tampa, CRA.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Crew, City Clerk's Office. Item 11 is a program change approval.
Yeah, I'll move item 11. I looked at it last night there. They're moving money from neighborhood improvements to marketing and promotion, which I think in that particular CRA is appropriate. That's Rob's thing.
We have a motion made by Councilman Dingfelder, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Who wants to take on number 12?
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Vieira. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Move to approve 13. Second.
Is that a duplicate,
No, this is
or is it just related?
No?
One's money and one's a program.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
All right. I'll second item 13.
Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Dingfelder. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, number 14. Who wants to take number 14?
I move. Second.
We've got a motion made by, was that me? Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Vieira.
Question on motion.
Any discussion?
Yes, sir. Yeah, in regard to item 14, I'll support it. I'd like to offer a friendly amendment that we get a report back, let's say, I don't know how quickly they're going to install it, but let's say 6 months from now, you know, on the cameras, the use of the cameras. There were some unanswered questions earlier that I understand why they were unanswered, because there is no answer yet. But just to get a report back from staff in person on the use of the cameras, how is it going? Has it improved things? What are we, you know, that sort of thing.
I'll second.
That's a friendly amendment to the motion.
Okay, we, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Chief.
Chairman, Board, this is item 15, which is a continuation of the workshop from our previous workshop session. The administration has 4 things to serve your agreement on. If I could, I'll enumerate those, and then if you have anything else you want to discuss after those 4 things, or in any order you please, we can do that. So we wanted to talk about the 3 phases of the recruitment, selection, and installation of an executive director. Ms. Selman wanted to talk a little bit about a legal update. Michelle Van Loon wanted to come in and talk about the service agreement that we had been working on for now a couple months, I believe, with some of the language. And lastly, Michelle Van Loon wants to kind of capstone this conversation with a motion that was made earlier about the retention pond task force and the timing of that. So those are the 4 things. Is there anything else that you want to address beyond these 4 items that I just shared?
Board members?
All right, so I'll kick it off. When we last spoke, I think this is my 3rd meeting with you from a CRA point of view. We talked about the city administration has separated the proposed executive director from the what would be the economic development administrator, which is a position still to be filled. And our recommendation, after looking through obviously our recruitment, selection, and installation process, is that we would prepare a solicitation for recruitment for the executive director, and whether it's nationally or internationally, we have two already contracted groups that can do executive level outsourcing of that already in our HR department. We're already doing that for several positions for the administration. We would like to circulate the draft of that, much like we would circulate an RFP. We'd like to circulate the language of that for your consideration and agreement, and then we would put that out, obviously, for recruiting purposes. We would also like to include you, as we previously discussed, in the selection process. There's probably several different models that we can use that I've seen at this level. We could create one-on-one environments when we get the selection process down based on the recruiting firm's recommendations. I'm a fan of not just going with the top tier, because I've found a lot of diamonds in the rough in the middle and upper tiers of that data. So we would probably give you a book that would show things in different levels and allow you to weigh in on those, and then we could bring that down to a select group for more formal interviews, whether we did that collectively here or you did it individually and then came back and work towards a finalization of that selection. And then as far as installation, once that person was picked through the selection process, then we would bring her or him here, and we could actually install them through a regular board meeting if that's your preference. So that's the recommendation. We would like to get on this sooner than later, and just like we spoke about last time, I think the biggest thing that I'm excited about is that we have a dedicated position that will work directly for the board and the things that the board needs to accomplish through the management program and the service level agreement as one team reporting back to the board, just like we have for the last couple months. I think you've seen a paradigm shift in the way we've been modifying our monthly reports to the way you requested, being responsive to the things that you have asked us to do over the last two meetings, and I don't see any different trajectory going forward.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one thing you mentioned there, Chief, on the interview. For me personally, I would strongly suggest individual interviews, not collectively, because then we'll have to do it here, and there are certain things that happen in interviews that shouldn't necessarily be on camera, I guess, if you will. It's just, we've all been there, right? So just my opinion for whatever that counts. I do agree that, the splitting of the positions, I think, was a very good move that I think addressed a lot of concerns that a lot of members of council had on a lot of different issues. I think whenever it comes to working with this administration on these kinds of issues, you all have shown the ability, the propensity to work with city council to reach out to us liberally on a number of issues, and I, for one, strongly appreciate that. I really do. I think that the proposal put forward incorporates those values. It incorporates the outreach that the Castro administration and you, sir, have continued to do to the city council. I do not believe that this is a honeymoon period from you guys. In other words, I don't believe that in 1 year y'all are going to start acting inappropriate or this or that. I believe that you're acting from a set of values. I really do, and I don't just say that. So just my thoughts in regards to that. But I did want to speak up again for the interview that I would strongly suggest that that's individual. Just my opinion.
And I concur with that recommendation, but I want to make sure that I offer the board a balanced approach. And for the record, my honeymoon period ended about 35 years ago in government. So this is what you get from here on out. I don't change in that respect of service delivery to you or the citizens. And that's the one thing I've been excited about is I think we're all, I know board member / Councilman Carlson and I spoke after the last, and we're focused on the community, and I think that's really where we need to go with this. So I'm hoping that you agree with our process. We can build the recruitment, get it to you as soon as possible for your feedback, And that recruitment would be bifurcated between our internal recruitment and our recruiting firm's input, because they probably have a more global perspective on hiring this level of person for this position.
Anyone else? Councilman Goods.
I just want to make sure I have clarity on it. And I know the administration has been working real good with this, and we appreciate that. I know I do. But I just want to be clear. We're saying this process will be for the city's economic development officer or the CRA economic officer?
Yeah, the CRA executive director.
CRA executive director.
Yes, CRA executive director. You're
I
correct.
saw a lot of
We have
articles
split
and
that.
papers and stuff like this. I
Yeah,
want to make.
no, we split that last time, and the administration is 100% behind having a dedicated CRA director based on the notion of what we said. It's a city within a city, and we need to serve it like that.
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, thank you to you and the mayor and everyone for working on this idea. I think it answers a lot of questions in the community. First of all, we need, for the amount of money we're spending, we need somebody to look at it full time. I still think we should take a vote on who this person reports to. Is that the next point, or is that included in this point?
Well, I think it's important that we have clarity on this to go forward, because as we put a recruiting package together, I mean, you know, right now it's falling under our human resource process and the administration benefits, pay, and all of those things. So, you know, anything separate from that is going to be a very interesting model that will probably require a different workshop.
Yeah, I think the county commission is set up so that there are 7 people and there's 1 county administrator, and the CRA is legally a different body, although we outsource to the city. We talked in the beginning about maybe taking that whole 1.7 and using it separately and hiring a whole staff, but at least that was a concept that was thrown out. Now we're at the executive director part, and I think it's important that we know that the executive director knows that the buck stops with the CRA. I mean, we're responsible for it, and there are several different models. Maybe Ms. Zellman's going to give us some legal advice. The model that I proposed was that this person would be hired just like Marty or a legislative aide with the charter amendments we made. We made it open-ended so that we could hire more staff, and the CRA could just put money in that thing. If it ends up that the only legal way to do it is to have either way, the person would be under the same HR rules and everything, and it still would be paid through the city. But if it ends up that this person is set up similar to the other CRA staff, what I would suggest is that we modify the agreement, the outsource agreement, to clearly state that this person reports to us. I think, as Councilman Good said, it kind of implied in the media that the person was going to report to the head of economic development, and I think this person should coordinate, because we have to make sure everything works together. But if the buck stops with us, if it's set up where the person reports to economic development and they both end up reporting to you and the mayor, we're just going to be rubber stamping everything at the end. And if we want to delegate our authority and let other people make the decisions for us, that's fine, but we ought to understand what we're doing when we do that.
And I think the part that I'm confused on is I don't know how the buck doesn't stop with you under this model either, because you're accepting a service level agreement with a total management package to serve the citizens through this board, and any separation of that, to me, I lose the teamwork effect or the continuity effect of management and resources that support that team. So the part that I guess what I'm trying to say without beating around the bush is, what problem are we trying to solve if we actually have a director that has got a separation between the managers that are actually out there charged doing the work with all the resources to implement the work? I'm just not understanding that model and how it changes the authority of the board through the process, since we're actually serving the board on a day-to-day basis under the CRA model. So that's the part I'm confused on.
Councilman Goose.
Chief, I see where you're going, but I also see where Mr. Carlson's going. It's a matter of perception sometimes. And you and I know, working in different areas, that people have a perception of this is the boss. And even though we can say and have this agreement, if that person is under the auspice of still the mayor, they're going to give that big pig of the pie and say, I work for the mayor. It just gives a sense, I guess, for this board or some of us, if I have a designated person, which that's what I thought would be our person, and that person would be a liaison with the administration's person, and still have that good gel working together. Now we talk about benefits and so forth. Well, the managers, our aides get benefits already. So if that's something to be compensated on top of that, fine. But our aides already get that. So and they answer to us. But and I have to say, because sometimes they tell us, well, sometimes depends on what it is. We answer to the administration. It depends on what it is. And the other times when they don't be bothered, you answer to the council members. So I think that's where the unbalance comes in sometimes. So I think for most of us on the board, we want to make sure that if we're responsible for enacting this CRA, that we have a person that knows that you're answering to us, but yes, you're working with the administration's person. So that's just the way I look at it and see it. And, I get that sometimes from directors now. I hear on the street sometimes, well, they're just city council. We want the answer to them. But in fact, you may answer to the mayor, but nothing doesn't move money-wise, or the city doesn't move. That's council approves it. And so I get kind of bothered when I hear that sometimes. Well, it's just city council. We don't have to really listen to them, But and I just don't want to get that feel with this position here. If it's our person, it's our person, and it can work with the city director who we select. But again, it's a vote of 4. So how we need to proceed, we'll proceed.
Councilman Vieira.
Did you want to respond to that directly, Bill? You can go first. I mean, if it's, you sure? Okay, thank you. Just a couple of issues. Something that Chief Bennett said in effect, which is we could be looking at a solution in search of a problem. I want to see the specific issues that we're trying to remedy. I think that I don't want to call it a compromise, but the moving halfway forward that the administration did takes care of a lot of the concerns. When Councilman Carlson first brought up this idea, I was very open to it. And then when I heard y'all's moving forward halfway, I think that's something that's very reasonable. There were some things that were mentioned before, such as, for example, in CRAs throughout Florida, is there any other CRA where the director reports directly to the CRA as opposed to the mayor?
I don't know the answer to that, but the only thing I do know is some cities have either attempted or did outsource the entire process, but not to this level.
Yeah.
I know the jurisdictions were smaller, and maybe it was an efficiency move. Maybe they figured the contract out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the politics or the operations of that, but I know there are a few cities down in South Florida that may have outsourced. But I don't know of a bifurcated model where you have a director, under the authority and day-to-day supervision of one group, 7 bosses that would supervise a group of managers and support staff on the other side of the administration.
And that wouldn't make it wrong if we were the only one to do it. That's not a presumption that somehow we'd be incorrect if we were to go down that route. But the issue is, I'd like to see is if anybody else has tried to experiment with that, so to speak, what were the results so we can take a look. I think there's an issue that requires some more investigation before we jump into it, in my opinion. Now, Chief Bennett, you'd also we had discussed, and I think it was Councilman Dingfelder had talked about some precautions to have accountability through council. For example, having a supermajority vote to hire the individual, and then having annual reviews, continue vote of confidence. I know that would put a hamper in for this individual, whoever he or she may be, to take the job, because then you're subject to a 7-person board. I understand that, but I think that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is going to make the person, work even harder to be engaged with us in all of our communities and constituents, et cetera. So that's certainly something we can take a look at. But I think there's the compromise that y'all have put forward, to me, addresses a lot of the concerns that I originally had. I think it moves a lot. I think it's something that is in response to the legitimate concerns that Councilman Carlson brought up, and I think it's something to be considered. But in terms of this proposal, there's a lot of evaluation and investigation and dialogue that I think still needs to happen. It's not there, in my opinion, at this time, but we need to look at it further before we jump into such a significant departure from what we're doing now.
And if I could respond to that, I look at it as a continuum. If we continue to analyze, we're going to be spending time, instead of recruiting, selecting, and installing, we're going to spend time analyzing, which is not a bad thing if that's the board's wish. The other side of the continuum is that, as we go through this, I always worry about what I call an overcorrection to something, because there is plenty of safeguards for the board between the service level agreement. The city has shown, again, and I appreciate the feedback on that, and I call it the right thing to do over a compromise. There should be an executive director that is specifically focused on serving the board, or through the citizens, serving the citizens through the board with the CACs, having those energetics focused on the CRA, working with and in support of our entire economic development holistic process and the metrics that we're looking to do. I have seen nothing but, from the time I've been up here, moving the bar closer and closer to what the CRA board has asked for. So, I feel like we're moving in good faith to execute in the direction that we've been asked to do. Again, if there's some problem that I'm missing, I'm not aware of it at this point. I just think that we're going to create a model that, and I understand that, there's the ability to hire aides, but you're working as a team, and now we're going to be working across, trying to work as a team, and I'm just afraid that those dynamics, from my experience of supervising and managing thousands, not hundreds, but thousands, that you need those inner dynamics and bringing that full level of service to the board on a regular basis through that director that's dedicated to this position, through the community, through the board. So that's just my feedback.
Councilman Carlson.
In terms of the problem, I won't go back and talk about the problems of the last few years, but there were a lot of problems that the community brought up, and Councilman Vieira talks about that it's not a honeymoon period, and I hope so. I agree with that. I like you. I trust you. I trust the mayor. I think you all are acting in good faith. I'm terrified of something happening like what happened in the last few years. The community was very unhappy in lots of different ways, and if it ends up that when the honeymoon period is over, it turns into us rubber stamping things again, then we're going to get all the complaints from the community, and we're going to have no power to change anything. And so that's where my concern is. I trust you all, and I think you're showing in good faith lots of things. Of course, there are whispers in the community about how things are going to change if we don't make this decision. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. But we look at other agencies, like one that we dealt with last week, that showed disdain for city council and showed that they didn't care about any influence that city council might have. And I think somehow we have to show people that there's not only one branch of government in this community. And in the case of the CRA, by law, we're in charge. And so if we don't take that, then we're giving it away. In terms of solutions, I didn't hear the one that you just mentioned that Mr. Dingfelder mentioned about reporting structure and supermajority. The way I would talk about the interview process is, and the way I mentioned it before, is that the CRA board would ask the staff and the mayor to participate in the process. The way you present it is the other way around, and that's kind of the language and thought that I'm thinking. Where is this going to end up? Is it going to be that we're going to hear about things after deals are done or decisions are made, and we might be included in the decisions, or are we first in the decision making because we are the legal board of the CRA, and then we'll bring everybody else in because we want to be collaborative. But if there's a solution where we can set up a review process, the Aviation Authority Board, the Port Board, other boards, they all give reviews and feedback to their executive directors. If we can do that as a CRA board, I would be fine with that, because that is a review process, and we have the chance with 30 days notice to cancel that outsource agreement whenever we want. But I think that we should show this person that they ultimately, even though they're an employee of the city, ultimately they're reporting to the CRA board. Otherwise, another option that we have, I understand from 163, is we can delegate this whole authority to another board. We can set up a separate CRA board, and city council doesn't have to deal with this at all if we don't want the authority. I'm not recommending that, but I think we just need to make it clear somehow either the person is working for us inside the city staff, or we need to make it really clear that the ultimate authority on the CRA is the CRA board.
Councilman Dinkfelder.
Thank you, Andrew. Will you hand that to John? John, can you put that on the overhead? 2 points I wanted to make. Number one, Louis, Mr. Chairman Vieira, I'm glad you reminded me about my brilliant idea. But I think and Mr. Carlson acknowledged it, I think that perhaps that can solve some of the concerns in the community and some of our concerns. Because if we do an annual review and that person doesn't get at least 5 votes, that's a pretty heavy hammer over somebody to remind them the other 364 days of the year that at the end of the day, they work with that administration, but they sure as heck have to answer to us. It's a little bit of a paradigm shift, but I kind of like it. So thanks for the reminder on that. Yes, sir. Mr. Bennett, if you could zoom that back a little bit so they can see my scribble in full.
Bring it up.
Other way.
Well, I can't see, so.
I know, just keep going. Nope, the other way.
Right.
There you go, keep going, stop.
There we go.
All right. I've mentioned this to Chief Bennett a couple times in the last couple of weeks. So the way I look at it is pursuant to the 18-point agreement or whatever it's ultimately going to be, the mayor and her staff answer to the CRA. I mean, that's what it is. So that's why I put up these 2 scenarios. We've got the CRA, and on this 1 day a month, the mayor answers to us, okay, as that, because that's the way the agreement reads. And like somebody said a minute ago, if we want out within 30 days or 90 days, we can always get out. But my concern was, and I read this in the newspaper, and I wasn't aware of it until I read it in the newspaper, that the next level is that where should the CRA person sit in their chain of command? And I would feel much more comfortable in scenario B, where the CRA director is on an even level with that economic development person. Not scenario A, which is what I read in the newspaper, which is where the CRA director answers to the economic development person. So I know I'm on a little shaky ground trying to suggest to the mayor, how she sets up her structure and that sort of thing. But in this particular very unique situation, I would feel much more comfortable knowing that CRA director was on the same level in the hierarchy, in the pecking order of the administration if they were side by side with the economic director. And let me tell you 2 reasons why, in my opinion. For one thing, and I think Councilman Goods mentioned this, there's a lot of symbolism out there. Okay, when you're talking about city government and 5,000 people, when they know that CRA director has the direct ear to the mayor, has answers directly to the mayor, not through the ED, but directly to the mayor, then that person gains some power just in terms of that positioning on the chart. And number 2 is communication with other staff. So in other words, if Ed Johnson wants to build a sidewalk in East Tampa and he routes it up through the CRA director, that he's having some problems with the construction staff or the purchasing staff or whatever, again, that purchasing staff and that construction staff, they might jump to it a lot better knowing that CRA director is placed up there at the higher level. So that's just, that's my 2 cents on that. I feel more comfortable strongly recommending to Chief Bennett and the mayor that they look at that B scenario, and I'm not springing this on John because he and I talked about it a couple times. So.
Councilman Carlson.
Talk so much. I look at it as 2 different tracks. So I could draw on yours, but the one, whether it's A or B, to me that's the HR track. So for regular performance appraisals and compensation, everything, that person reports up to the mayor. But then there's a separate line where the whole group is an outsourced service happens to be provided by the city. It could be provided by anybody, but it's provided by the city to the CRA board. And in that way, from a CRA performance point of view, the person reports directly to CRA. It's only from the HR point of view that the person reports up through the other chain of command.
And I think that's where I see it operationally. I see the operational aspect of the CRA director and the staff of the CRA director serving this board and being administrated, obviously, in the things that you discussed under the relative org chart. It's all going to come down to, obviously, that collaborative approach that we're all trying to reach the same goals. When the mayor appoints an economic administrator, if you will, I mean, they're going to have to work together just like we're talking about working together here. And I think if you remember my comment last time, the reason I wanted to get momentum on the selection process and recruiting and selection process is because chemistry is very important. And I think if we socialize that chemistry through this process and get near the finalization and installation, when the mayor is ready to announce an economic administrator, that relationship is going to be part and parcel of that. Because it's like any other team. The more chemistry you have, the more we're going to get accomplished. I just want to make sure that we're actually delivering the services, to the people that need to be done through the CRA process. And I have no concerns about where we're heading with adding a director, as we talked about earlier, separating from the for the economic administrator. My larger concerns was getting more synthesis in our strategic plans and the things that actually drive us to the end game through the people that we put in these positions. So you have a good strategy, you're going to get good outcomes with the right people. And that's the part through the workshop that I was hoping to do, is to get a reset on a lot of our strategic momentum and make sure that we get the right people to execute. I have no doubt that we're going to find the right person and the right team to get that done. So, once again, I'll end it with there is no lack of service direction towards the board in this, and that's good. That's how this administration is going to support that position. So whether it's a set of lines for HR or a set of responsibilities through your service agreement, our only commitment is to get this done, and we understand the position and the power and the responsibility of the CRA board.
Thank you. I just thinking out loud here, and I look at these schematics of A and B, economic person, that is appointed by the mayor. Does that position have to be approved by the council?
Yes.
All right. Go back to the CRA. That's approved by the council. Does it have to be approved by the mayor?
Yes.
So you're at the standstill. I mean, I don't understand it. I don't understand what the argument is. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, they're either going to get along or they're not. You don't know who you're going to hire. We don't know who's going to hire. So maybe they're two wonderful people that can't get along. That's why they have divorces. And I'm looking at this, I said, I've always trusted other elected officials until they cross the line. And I haven't found one yet that has crossed the line.
Right.
That's all I'm going to say.
Councilman Goods?
I'm willing to make compromises in sessions, but just in my keen mind, we got one avenue over here and this other avenue over here, but again, this avenue kind of connects to this other avenue. But the administration has been forthcoming so far. They have. I have to give them credit for that. And one thing I can say about the mayor, no matter where we are at, and I heard it, it's never happened in the past, she always recognizes council. If we're sitting somewhere in the back, she has us come to the front, which I don't know why from the get-go we should be in the front already when she gets there versus us trying to find seats or finding a parking space way down the road. So I can say that she does acknowledge council, and hopefully the rest of that will start trickling to the other directors in the city, that council is important too. And I guess I just got to hear a little bit more to make a decision. But I just want to make sure that we get that gel to understand that, hey, this person is going to be the driving force. This person is driving the city, but they're meeting at some point, and they're going to be able to work together.
Councilman Carlson.
I don't know if you're asking for a vote on this specific thing, but I would like to make a motion that staff come back to us at the next meeting with recommendations on how we can set up a reporting and approval structure similar to what Councilman Vieira and Dingfelder spoke about, where it's clear to the person being hired that at least on an annual basis they're being reviewed by the CRA board.
Let me speak to that, and I appreciate very much what you just said, Mr. Carlson. But in A and B, no matter who you hire, they're still human beings. No matter who it is, they're still going to have differences of opinion to some degree. So whether it's A or B, it makes no difference if the mayor's there or not, because if they don't get along, they don't get along. And I'm not talking about the mayor and the director or the mayor and the economic individual. If those two individuals don't get along, forget about the mayor, forget about the council. Then you got chaos started somewhere, or kindling of something started. So it makes no difference who you hire, makes no difference who we approve. If those two individuals, this is human aspect. If I don't get along with my wife, I'm gonna get a divorce, or I'll be kicked out of the house, one of the two. So what I'm trying to put into it, if these two human beings, whoever they are, agree on something, that's fine. And there's going to be disagreement. There's a disagreement here. There's many 4 to 3 votes. We don't not stop speaking to each other. Maybe tomorrow I will. But what I'm trying to tell you is that I can't have a perfect show. There is nothing in the world that's perfect other than one person. He's not here no more. So what I'm trying to say is it makes no difference who you hire. They got to have communication, and they got to have an understanding of what the goal is. How you get to the goal is up to these two persons, and then with the help of the mayor and the council. That's what it's all about. It ain't about power. There is no power in government. There's a voice in government, but no one of us control everything. Thank you.
Councilman Dingfelder.
Motion and second? Yeah. Okay. Just to speak on the motion, and I'm going to offer a friendly amendment to help Mr. Bennett and his HR team speed things along, and I'm going to support the motion, but to help them speed along instead of coming back and then we have to talk about it for another month, why don't we just incorporate it into direction to say, okay, start that recruiting process, but include that 5-vote concept at both at the front end and at the annual end as part of it, and then that way Mr. Bennett can get on with it.
And can I provide a little feedback before the motion? Thank you. So I understand, and I think we could run this concurrently for the sake of time, which is one of my 3 pieces of the management triangle: time, quality, resources. We want to keep time moving. So for the sake of getting things moving for the community, I guess I just want to make a point of clarification. You know, if there was a review, much like I saw in the county government model, where you obviously had a chairperson, you had a county administrator report to 7 bosses, and they would get reviews from each. I respect that in spirit, but what I wanted to say is, if 5 of you called me or the mayor 6 months into this and said, this isn't what I'm not sure what you think we would do other than take action to continue to serve the board and the community the way we needed to do it. So I look at it as this: we want to bring you the recruiting package, which is really the RFP. We want to include you in the selection process so you get the right chemistry and you feel good about the hire. And then we want to include you in the feedback loop, because this person is going to serve the board day in and day out to get the CRA process done with the support of the management team and the support staff and the rest of all the logistics and support from city government. So the model is in place to basically do that review without the formality. If you want the informality scoped out between now and next month, happy to do that. But I just want to say that it's by default, it already exists. You know, I look at you as 7 board executives that are looking to hire an individual to run the CRA through the power of this board for the service of the community. And at any time the board is dissatisfied with that, the other piece I want to talk about is to put our feet in the shoes of a person who's applying for this position and asking how many folks may or may not apply if they feel like there's this deep concern about how things go, you know, as far as the oversight and the administration. But if that's the request, then we could package the recruiting package and the oversight at the same time and bring it back to you in a month.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, my main thing is I didn't want to enter into this with a relationship that is going so well with suspicious minds. You know, we can't. How does that song go? We can't build. We're caught in a trap. I can't walk out because I love you too much, baby. You know, I don't. I don't want to go into this with suspicious minds. There's what's that old saying? If you're a hammer, everything's a nail, right? I don't want this council to be the hammer that's going to see this administration as the nail, so to speak, or vice versa. By the way, when it comes to these safeguards, the way I take Councilman Carlson's motion that incorporates Councilman Dingfelder's general ideas is some level of council accountability. Now, if we take a look at a vote that says every single year you've got to have 6 members of council approving you or else you're gone, or 5 members, that might be a little too draconian. You know, you could have maybe something where, excuse me, through a supermajority on city council, the person would have to leave 5-2. Again, I'm just throwing out ideas. You know what I mean in that regard, so that some of our concerns can be addressed and in place of something that could potentially be more draconian. For the hire, I almost want to make it a 7. I mean, we shouldn't do this, but I want to get a 7-0 vote on that hire.
We want to drive that model.
Amen. I mean, that cannot be a 4-3 vote, a 5-2, a 6-1 vote on these issues that we see. It's got to be a 7-0 vote. But some measure of accountability, I think, to be instituted is something that we should look at, in my opinion. But it can't be so, there's a balance. It can't be so draconian that we're going to be pushing back good people from coming.
Yes.
But on the other hand, we do need some measure of accountability through city council. I do think that something can be formulated that we can all support, I think. That's my opinion. So if the motion is to have staff come back with some suggestions to be had, I can certainly support that. I think that's fine.
I agree with everything you said.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Including the Elvis part? We can do a duet if you want.
Don't do that again. All right, we still have a motion on the floor made by Councilman Carlson, amended by Councilman Dingfelder. Are you acceptable to that? Seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Are you acceptable to?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask that the motion be stated in its entirety for the record?
Thank you. Councilman Carlson.
I should write it down when I say it. So the part you added was that we approved for the city to go forward to hire the person.
Initiate the recruiting process, and then adding on the 5-2 vote, and I'm not sure if that's
Yeah, so the motion would be that we would ask the city to proceed with the hiring of the CRA executive director, and that at the next meeting, staff would come back to us with recommendations for providing at least annual oversight and feedback of this executive director by the CRA board.
Got it.
And if I may, I think that's a good general motion that should get wide support, and it leaves staff with a number of options that we can look at for accountability that I think will get widespread support from council as well as I would think the administration as well. So I'm willing to support that.
Surely.
This is an unusual situation with the city, I think. What I would like to see, and this is not for me or my ego, it's to show the public, back to some of the concerns. The public had a lot of concerns about how things were done before, and sorry to have that scar tissue from the community to bring forward in this situation. And as Louis said, we're trying to build trust, and hate to do that, but whether it's option A or B, I think it would be helpful from a public-facing point of view to show A or B as the HR structure, and then separately to show the outsource structure. So whether it's another line or a dotted line, the executive director.
I know exactly what you're talking
yeah,
about.
so just that it shows the person, if the CRA board cancels the contract, that person is still working for the mayor. So that the mayor may or may not decide to keep the person, but the person has to perform the way the CRA board wants, and so somehow there's two bosses.
I completely
So
understand.
if there
what
was a
you're-
chart like that we could
Yeah.
show, and maybe in our annual reports, that Ms. Van Loan does, if we could have that in the front even, just to show people that it is a dual relationship, and we need to all enter this under the auspice of collegiality too, which I appreciate your help and the mayor's help in moving this forward. It's more than a compromise. It's generous that you all are being so kind about working with us on this.
Well, I think, and very, very infrequently I speak for the mayor because she's much better at it than I am, but we really try and keep our eye on the ball. And the ball to me is the citizens and the outcomes that they get. And while we're still early in this administration, seeing where we're going and seeing the community come in, I look at the community's comments as a badge of honor, because we live in a great country and a great city that you can come in and you can bring your passion to the floor, and we need to listen. And even if we need to call out certain things to get an operational understanding of that, that's what we're here to do. So I think it's all heading in the right direction, and I appreciate the feedback from the board today about putting this together, and we'll bring it back to you in 30 days.
That's one question.
Councilman Goode.
As I look at the chart, the managers, are there currently annual evaluations on the managers today?
I have one here, yes.
Because I don't think anybody's ever, so the managers are now getting current evaluations now.
Right. So, yes, the managers, in the former administration, the managers reported, including the support staff, to the Economic Development Administrator, and they wrote so in this case, this new director would be writing those evaluations. I also asked for midterms, because to me, it's a big deal to get feedback at least twice a year, if not daily. So yes, those will exist, and we're going to be pushing to get those better across the entire city as well.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Dingfelder?
No, I think we're ready to
Okay,
vote
there's
on
been a
that.
motion made by Councilman Carlson, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mr. Chair, and I apologize. So I would like, here's my motion on this A and B, just to get it addressed, because I didn't want it to impose on the last motion. I wanted it to be cleaner. But I will make a motion that this body respectfully requests that when the administration hires, and when we all hire the CRA director and everything gets set up, and they hire an ED and everything gets set up, that they respectfully consider going with the B approach. I'm not thrilled about the idea of the CRA director being subservient to the economic development director, who then answers to John and the mayor and yada, yada, yada. So that I can't tell them what to do, but we can respectfully request that they consider that B scenario instead of A.
It's duly noted.
It's
a motion.
Okay, Councilman Carlson.
I think on the chart, though, they report to you, right? They don't report directly to the mayor. Doesn't everybody report to you?
There's an administrative flow that goes through me, but the actual administrators do report directly to the mayor.
Okay, yeah, and for me, the only difference is that I think the goal of economic development is different than the goal of the CRA. They're similar, but they're not the same. And I've been trying to get us off the singular goal of real estate development, which I think everybody is focused away from now. But it just so that we don't want economic development to influence it. It's got to be coordinated, but it doesn't mean that that we'd have to do it this way. And the fear in the past is that some real estate development comes in and the city really wants to land it, so they put the squeeze on the CRA to say, hey, you need to subsidize this deal, and then all the CRA money's gone and we do away with all the other priorities that we had.
Understood.
Any other comment?
No, who got the second?
I'm going to give it to Councilman Carlson, if that's all right. There's been a motion by Councilman Dingfelder, seconded by Councilman Carlson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, John.
3 things left on our side of the workshop, so I was going to bring up, Ms. Zellman was going to go first, and then we will close out with Michelle Van Loan.
If I may, I need to have about an hour to take care of something in between this council and the evening council, so I apologize. I'm going to have to excuse myself early, so my apologies to everybody.
Thank you.
Do we need copies of this?
Yes.
No, but you can give it to the
Yes.
clerk.
So if we could get to the meat of the action,
Yeah.
so that we can. No, 17's been taken care of. If we could,
We skipped it.
Excuse me?
We skipped 17 and 5 were identical.
they're all the same.
17 and 5 were identical, and we skipped it. So I haven't done 17 yet. But we're now on 15.
No,
But I'm not gonna
17
take
is 17 has been pulled. That's taken care of.
No, sir.
They were taken care of.
Yeah, but I didn't give you my report.
That's 15.
5 and 17 was a report from me on facade grants, which I haven't given yet. But that's not what I'm gonna do now. We're still in the workshop part, so I just wanna stay in order, if that's okay. So, the reason that I'm going first is because we were wrapping up the workshop with a discussion of what your priorities are for the CRAs, and as we discussed then, I had some concerns because we talked a lot about economic development and workforce development and job training, and I said, my read of the statute and the advisory, the Attorney General opinions, and particularly in light of the legislative changes in 2019, is that you cannot use TIF funds for those types of projects, for workforce training, job training. And I agreed to come back and research that by December, but I actually have the answer now, and because it impacts your priorities, I wanted to go ahead and give it to you. And as I said to Mr. Dingfelder on the way out, I hope I'm wrong, but as it turns out, I'm not. And basically, again, I did go back and did careful research on the statute and the statutory change, the legislative changes, the Attorney General opinions, and I also had a very insightful phone conversation with Cliff Shepard, who is the General Counsel for the Florida Redevelopment Association. And again, for those of you who weren't able to attend the conference, they're the overall state redevelopment association that even in that Miami-Dade grand jury report, they said, they're the arbiters of the best practices for CRAs in the state. Cliff is the general counsel for the FRA. He's also the city attorney for the city of Maitland, the town attorney for the town of Hunts Inlet, land use counsel for Satellite Beach, but also serves as CRA counsel for numerous smaller cities across the state of Florida. And I walked Cliff through our question, and he said, unfortunately, again, that I was absolutely correct, that TIF funds cannot be used for workforce development, job training, and other such items that are not tied to bricks and mortar redevelopment. He is aware that some cities, such as City of St. Petersburg, right out on their website talks about using TIF funds and CRA, TIF funds for workforce training and job development. He said, well, there is always going to be some people that will ask for, that don't ask for, what's the word, will ask for forgiveness rather than approval. But he said he advises all of his CRAs to avoid that, particularly in light of the enhanced attention that the state legislature is paying to CRAs. You don't want to have them react even worse than they already have reacted by taking away your powers even more. And he said, it's important to remember that CRAs, which again are a creation of statute, were not created to be social service agencies. They were specifically created for the purpose of redevelopment of areas that were suffering from slum and blight. And I told him, I said, we have one particular board member with the sentiment of, I don't like all this focus on real estate development. And his response to me was, and I quote, "The purpose of a CRA is real estate development." That, again, that is what a CRA is. Your powers are specifically enumerated in section 163.370, which is all about acquisition of property, rehabilitation of property, building of streets and parks, but all real estate development related. And then again, 163.387, paren 6, paren C, specifically enumerates what TIF funds can be spent on. And again, the significant change in the last legislative session was in two parts of the statute, including what I just quoted. They took out language that said including but not limited to, which is what cities and counties across the state relied on to do all these other things with TIF funds. So, I'm the new sheriff in town, and I'm having to talk with our CRA managers as well, because we've really got to start looking case by case at what TIF funds are being spent on. But again, they really, it's absolutely clear they cannot be spent on job training, workforce development. And then one final comment he made about this, and someone brought it up during public comment, this concept that CRA funds, if you dissolve a CRA, the other parts of the city get more money is really a false premise, because what TIF financing is taking the increased property values that happen as a result of having a CRA and starting to do redevelopment, taking what would have otherwise gone to the county and letting it stay in the CRA area for that 30-year period. And he said the way he describes it is, the concept is basically you're taking county money in order to increase property values in the CRA so that the county gets a return on its investment 30 years later when it's able to start collecting the full tax dollars again. He said that's kind of how he explains TIF financing to his TIFs. And again, he says, another point to make is that with a CRA, the money that's collected in one area of the city is being put back into the community that paid those tax dollars. So again, I wanted to explain that to you before you finished identifying your priorities for the CRAs, and also, as we've been telling the CRA managers, is unfortunately we have to start taking a much more careful approach on a case-by-case basis as to how TIF monies are being spent.
Are you finished, Councilman Carlson?
Yeah, on the issue of how taxes are allocated, it's keeping what the guy said is a common explanation that I hear, but the bottom line is that the money is being kept in a certain area and it's growing. It may be because of the investments or not, but the money is growing in there. The problem is that whatever the increase is, that money should be going to the general fund to pay for basic services, and the rest of the city is subsidizing that area for the amount that they should have been paying, that they're paying on these other things. And so I think we have to look at that. On to the point about the county money, I think the county's actually renegotiated on one or two of ours to reduce their amount, but we could solve that through an interlocal agreement and get the county to to say, hey, certain amounts of money we're gonna put in. We couldn't bond them, but we could make that investment anyway. But the bigger point is that my concern about real estate is more about a big developer like. Let's say a developer comes into East Tampa and wants to spend $100 million on some big shopping center, and then we put all the CRA money in that district in that development, or like could happen up by the USF area. My concern is more about focusing all the money on one big bet. And we've seen what happened with Central Ybor and the old Channel side, the old shops at Harbor Island. I don't know whether any CRA money paid for any of that, but we see money spent, city money or county money spent on a development that fails. And instead, I'd like it to be spread out. Plus, though, there are a lot of things, what I might suggest is a nuance here, and you can disagree with me. It's not I wouldn't call sidewalks and landscaping and roads real estate. Maybe it's bricks and mortar or some kind of physical structure or physical environment. And it's not, maybe we can't spend it on social services, but I think even sidewalks and roads and landscaping are better than spending it to subsidize a big developer. And so I think if you look at 163, what it says it is allowed, there's a whole list of things. And within that, I think we ought to be creative while listening to the community to try to solve the problems. And we ought to diversify our investment instead of investing in one or two big bets.
Just to be clear, I did use the term bricks and mortar, but you're correct. The statute specifically refers to things like streets and infrastructure and parks, so it isn't just a building.
Are you complete?
Yes.
Are you finished? Councilman Dingfeld, Michelle, are you next?
It's all continuation of this, sort of moving the topic along, yes, but when you're done with the discussion.
I think we're finished. Councilman Dingfelder.
Yeah, just in regard to the financial part of it, and, I'm not advocating we dissolve CRAs, but it's an interesting discussion. But I didn't understand the financial analysis, because right now the downtown CRA, I think, is generating $15 million of TIF annually. Is that approximately correct, Michelle?
It's in the back of your PowerPoint. I can give you the exact dollars.
Yeah, so when you find it, let me know. But let's just, for argument's sake, if we dissolved that TIF, then I agree with Mr. Carlson. I'm not agreeing with it, but I would agree with you. If we did, then I think that a good bulk of that money theoretically would go back into the general fund. Yeah, go ahead.
Your downtown for FY20 is about $15,072,000 and change.
Yeah. So I don't really understand, Ms. Ellman, what his point is or your point is about that dissolution and the fact that it wouldn't go back to the general fund? What am I missing?
More would go to the county than does now. That's with TIF financing, money that would otherwise go to the county gets to stay in the CRA.
All right, so that's the point, is that it's that county factor.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I can accept that, although I think that in downtown they did tweak it when they renewed it. And I don't remember exactly what that tweak was. What was the tweak, Michelle?
They tweaked it in the sense that they're not contributing through the interlocal agreement, but as a side agreement, they are contributing tens of millions of dollars up front to help pay for some of the redevelopment in downtown, mostly aimed at the convention center.
Convention center, yeah. So but how about when that convention center project is over? Is that commitment still there?
Well, they're up to, and I think it's
because they basically withdrew out of our downtown.
Right, but they committed up to I think $50 million to help for all those renovations at the convention center.
Right.
So they withdrew, but as opposed to waiting for the last 10 or 15 years, they're committing to it up front to front load it much faster.
And is that about over now, or is that about halfway over?
No, we're that's what all of this is, that some of the questions about all the meeting rooms upstairs and building out over the river walk, and they've already contributed, I think it's up to $13 million over the past couple of years. So they're putting in a lot of money towards that.
Okay.
I didn't come with all my notes from Rob, but I had it all written down on other paper. I wasn't prepared for the details on the convention center.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Anything else?
So I just want to address Councilman Carlson's concern, again, Michelle Van Loan, Economic Development. When the CRAs invest in developments, we're not investing on the private property. So downtown, all that investment is in the increased capacity and replacement of storm and wastewater and water capacity lines that we were facing anyway prior to that development. Because of the development, we sped up our investment in the infrastructure. But our CRA dollars are not, and I can say this with 100% certainty, our CRA dollars are not being spent on the private property for that development. In East Tampa, do any of you remember the Midland Hotel that was out at 50th Street? It was dilapidated, empty, vacant. It was a haven for drugs and prostitution. And we finally had a developer that came in and turned to the Quality Inns and Suites. We put in $650,000 in the infrastructure around it. The sidewalks, widening the street. They donated land so we could make a full dedicated street. All of these amounts of money that we spend adjacent to private development to help sort of spur and catalyze that private development is voted on at the CAC level and then comes to you. So if there were decisions made in the past that you feel you wouldn't make, all of those decisions will come to you for that final vote, and they do come up through the community before we bring them here. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood it's not some backroom deal that we make with our CRA dollars. Everything goes through our CACs, everything comes back through you before we can spend it. And so what I want to follow up, we wanted Andrea to go first to talk about what we could spend on for two different issues. We still only really have one person's input on the 18 points. After Andrea spoke to Cliff, she has drafted revised 18 points. We would like to send that out to you, circulate it for feedback and comments that we can then incorporate. We also have to incorporate some of this discussion regarding the executive director position. So we are getting back to you on that, but it changed direction after Andrea talked to Cliff. So is that an acceptable process?
Does everybody concur with that?
Lastly, at the workshop, I had sent you all after that workshop, our strategic planning workshop, the chart to help prioritize. I've only received 2 out of 7 feedback. I believe you all need a little bit more time, but given Andrea's, again, comments about TIF spending, we are going to slightly amend that to gray out those items. So I don't want to reflect that they weren't in the CRPs, but we are going to gray out the items that we feel no longer should be included in the prioritization. I will resend that out, and I'm going to ask you, when would you like to create your own deadline for getting those priorities back to us?
Before next CRA meeting?
I know we're going into the holiday season, so that's why I'm asking. You're setting a strategic plan and guidance for the CRAs is going to have a big impact as we go into our budgeting session starting in the spring, when we start our process. So that's sort of when we would like to have completed your document that provides that kind of guidance to the CACs and the individual CRA districts. So that's when we're sort of looking. So if you feel like maybe your minds are in other places and you want to take this back up and have it due by late December and we get you back something in January, if you think you can get it done for December, but that's at your discretion.
Board members, the 9th of December, which is the Monday before the next CRA board meeting, will that give us enough time?
So we'll resend out the chart then.
Thank you. The two that have already submitted, do we have to redo ours?
No.
Because
I believe we don't. Pardon me? No, I didn't know if you want me to list them, but I've received Councilman Maniscalco's and I've received Chair Citro's.
Oh, I thought we did it in the office that day. Okay, all right.
No, we didn't go through that with the chart stuff. No,
my
we talked about a lot of other things.
My dog ate mine.
It must be a brother to my dog. Lastly, so is there anything else on the strategic planning workshop part? So the last thing that Chief Bennett wanted to mention, I was going to ask about, I was not aware of Councilman Good's motion about the task force and community input on the pond. So I'm just requesting that given again that we're going into holidays, I don't want to risk not having participation by the community or members because of holidays. We'd like to report back at the February CRA board meeting.
Councilman Goode.
That'll be fine, and I just want to make it out there. There's no slight to the manager, so I want to make that clear. It's just that I know right now the manager has so many other projects on his plate, and I want a designated person to move with this situation here, because I think we need to run with it. I think it's going to be a big part of East Tampa, and that's why I made that motion the way I did, but I have no problem with extending the time on that.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Information and reports, Councilman Dingfelder.
Oh, we got more?
But just before we move on, Mr. Chairman, does the clerk need a motion to amend Goode's?
If you'd like to do that, I can. That would be good for the agenda. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we move it 90 days. What you want? February CRA.
We have a motion to be made by Councilman Goode, seconded by Councilman Dingfelder. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
So items 5 and 17 are one and the same, and again, this was Councilman Miranda's motion, and now he's not here again. Do you want to put it off, or do you want me to give a brief report?
Let's put it off until the next.
Move to reschedule to the next meeting.
Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Carlson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. All right. Information reports and new business. Councilman Dingfelder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Goode.
Nothing, sir.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Just a suggestion, we take a nap before the 5 o'clock meeting, because that's why I'm going right to the office.
Thank you. Councilman Carlson.
Please humor me for a second. We've had discussions here about how we need to take feedback from the community and we need to take feedback from the CACs. At the same time, where we sit, we see a crisis of poverty and we see a crisis of housing. We heard this morning there's at least a need for 20,000 more units of housing and maybe as many as 50,000. And the Tampa Housing Authority and all the people out there don't have enough money to build anywhere near what we need. I would like to make a motion that we ask staff to hypothetically look at what we could do if we took 30% of each of the CRA's funding and applied it to affordable housing solutions. Not committing to doing that, but just to look at what we could do if we did that.
Ms. Zellman, do we actually need a motion for that, or could Councilman Carlson just ask for a staff report on that?
Well, usually you ask for staff reports by motion, so.
Okay, go ahead. Second on that?
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilman Carlson, seconded by Councilman Goode. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. That's it. Councilman Dingfelder, you have the gavel.
Yes, sir.
Board members.
You're out of order. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't put a dent in the table.
I did put a big dent in here today. I'll pay for it. As chair, I can set the agenda. However, I would like except for the two that are not here, I'd like to make a motion that public comments be put in or have public comments spoken right after our invocation, pledge, and roll call.
Second.
Hang on. Hang on. And that all other agenda items and or staff reports are time sensitive, time definite, starting at 10 o'clock. Who seconded it?
Second. Question on the motion.
Yes, sir.
In our regular rules, don't we speak to 30 minutes of public comment?
Yes.
Yes. However, if I may, Mr. Chair, however, if our public comment is done before then, I feel that we could go ahead and take our staff reports or our agenda items.
I think it's better to put it, to anticipate that it would go longer. That way we don't have to rush.
Thank you.
But then staff, we're not, if staff comes in at 9 and then there's this tension going on, it's much better to have staff tell them, come in at 10 and we'll for sure be able to take it because we'll have plenty of time.
Yeah, no, I like the concept. I'm just saying, are we gonna do, let's say there's 15 people, and that's gonna, times 3 is at least 45 minutes. Are we gonna do 45 minutes of public comment right at the beginning?
I don't see why not, and then that way, again, an agenda item can come up if the staff is not here.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and the only thing I would note is if you do put, for example, staff reports at a time certain of 10, you can't start them any earlier than 10.
Understood, but there might be another agenda item.
Right.
But
I'm sure there's other things we could do.
yeah, I believe it would be much better if we have public comment instead of making the citizens that come down here each and every time, or each and every Thursday, to speak their piece, definitive word there is piece, that they are not having to sit. And that way we can hear their voices earlier on.
I think that's a great idea. What about the parking situation? They keep complaining about parking tickets. We don't have parking passes or something. What if they park at Fort Brooke? Is there any direction on that? Do you all know?
I don't know if I want to touch that one right now.
Okay.
Councilman Carlson, I think that might make the city go broke if we have the whole place full and everybody asks for a parking pass.
Yeah, okay.
But if you want to make a separate motion.
No, we don't have one of that.
Councilman Dingfelder.
Oh, what? You want it back?
No, motion has been made and seconded.
Who was the second, sir?
Okay, motion made and seconded by Mr. Carlson, motion made by Mr. Citro. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Second.
Motion to receive and file, seconded. Guido made the motion to receive and file. Mr. Good seconded. Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passed unanimously on the first one.
We don't say it's true, we don't say it's
Mr. Guido made the motion to receive and file. Mr. Orlando made the second, and there's any vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you.
We are adjourned till what time?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.